Hello, and welcome to another session of The Sacred Wound as a Portal to Your Awakening, embracing the dark night of the soul. Throughout this event, you will learn from some of the most amazing individuals from all over the world who are sharing various stories and often their own dark night of the soul stories and the incredible lessons, gifts, and talents that they have all been divinely experienced from this process. My name is Charlie Giles, and I am honoured to be your host for this powerful wisdom sharing event. Before we begin today's session, I would like to do an acknowledgement to country. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we are all meeting on today and thank them for their continued custodianship of the many lands, seas, and waters that we all have between us. I would also like to acknowledge our elders, past, present, and emerging, and thank them for their guidance and their wisdom that they continuously provide for us. Thank you. Today's session, we are talking to a very special guest, Cathleena Hailley. Cathleena is an embodiment of the divine feminine who works with the Council of Nine Collective, and in particular with Jesus, Metatron, and other ascended masters. Her coding accesses the womb water of an individual's birth, so that they are brought back to their original soul expression, creating a rebirth to allow full expression of the soul's imprint. As the lineage of the life architect, her crystalline DNA signature not only carries the frequency of perfect pitch to align to the original human template, Earth template, and the universe's template, but continually recalibrate this alignment. Having incarnated as Arcturian, Andromedan, and as a member of the Council of Nine Galactic Collective, Cathleena brings the knowledge of human patterns of existence, along with her extensive knowledge and work with interplanetary and galactic portals. My goodness. Through this, she accesses human patterning with galactic information, technologies, and energies to fully access their original soul's blueprint. Cathleena has a business degree and has worked with many professionals and medical practitioners. Her background in massage using techniques as rolfing and myofascial has allowed her to begin to access more subtle energies connected to the emotional patterning that creates an individual's life. Through her understanding of sacred geometry, she has channeled a vibrational device from the Arcturian collective. Cathleena now uses all of her business knowledge and experience with sacred geometry to align with her resetting the crystalline DNA. Woo. Please welcome Cathleena Hailley for today's topic, being human as a multidimensional energy. Hi, Cathleena.
Hi there. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. I was wondering if, just because your bio, for some people, might be something that they've never even heard of before, someone who is able to speak to all these different beings and have this amazing connection that you have. Would you be able to explain a little bit about how this became your world or your galaxy?
Sure. Well, I like to say that I came in on. So, when I was a small child, I was just very aware of everything going on. It was like chaos in my family. But one of the first experiences that I had was that my parents, of course, would say something, and so I would hear obviously what they said out of their mouth, but then I would hear their thoughts, and it was different from what they said. And then I would also feel their emotions, and that was different from both. And so it was very confusing, and I found a lot of withdrawal, a lot of pulling inward. And, I guess, and I like to tell this part of the story that, my father, although I wouldn't say that he was particularly balanced, I'd say he had some awareness, and he learned about transcendental meditation. So I learned that about the age of 6. And during that time, I would go, into the meditation. And I didn't realize it at the time when I was young, but later I realized there were 2 people there, and it was Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. It was like we were holding hands, and so it was like this Trinity. And then as I would go deeper with them, then I was taken to the Akashic records, and and I could see it, and I have a vision of it. It looked like a Roman temple, very large building with these giant pillars and so on. And there were these beings, and I remember these very large light beings. Later, I realized, a lot of them were, well, those I think were the guardians of, light and beings, higher dimensional beings. And there was also Arcturians and Pleiadians and so on. And I remember walking in and seeing like there's a pillar, just this podium kind of in the middle, and there was a book there. And I did look at the page, and it was my book, my Akashic Records, because that's what it was. And I couldn't tell you what it said now, but I have a feeling that that was something that, I don't know, maybe, I felt a settling. I don't remember it that way, but I can kind of feel it in my energetic field now that it was sort of a settling in. So that was kind of early on, but that didn't, I didn't have any awareness, so my journey took me into, a lot of different things. And I guess my this partly in my bio, it talks about, having been a massage therapist. So I was a massage therapist for really over 30 years. And it was during that time I was drawn into, body work. Prior to that, though, I was in business and have a business degree. I have a lot of awareness of mathematics and so on, which is also in my bio about sacred geometry and so on. And so, we begin to learn, and I always say you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's like whatever we feel that we're drawn to in what we see as the 3D world is connected to elements of who we really are as multidimensional beings. And, what I see is just this unfolding. And I guess that's kind of how my life began. It's like in the beginning, I had light, right? It came in, but again, confusing. And then it went towards the density aspect. And then that density began to lift off, which in other words, like I say, how did I get from, I was, finance major in college to massage. And, I had to surrender my misery because I was very unhappy. And I had, the adage, use your mind, not your hands. And so it was like I was being guided away from something that felt innate to me, comfortable. But when I let go, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I feel like that's the natural push, when people want to wake up, and know who they really are. There is a natural push that's kind of inside you that's guiding you, and it's whether or not you're brave enough. And so to kind of, get bigger into the story here, to know myself as a multidimensional being, in that whole surrendering the misery, it's like I had to start to observe. And I've always been a huge observer of anything anyway, but human interactions, I always say I didn't know how to wear this human suit. I've never really known how to do that. And so I couldn't get it. And it was always a lot of mental energy. And a lot of that is coming from what we refer to as the false matrix and this inverted matrix that's going on. But just from my own awareness as mathematical, there was always this kind of logical sequencing, how I would size things up. I was very alert. I noticed everything. Well, from a human perspective, it's like, wow, okay, you're on alert, you're a lot cautious, and yes, I had reason for that. Growing up in my household, it was like a lot of chaos and things like that. But, as I delve inward, because as we know, this is an inward journey, we talk about ascension, but it's really inscension. We're inscending, right? So we are embodying that we are. And what does that really mean? It's like we're showing up as who we really are. And as we allow ourselves to do that, and this has really been my journey, as I allowed myself to get to know who I was. And then I'm going to regroup that a little bit, because part of it was not so much allowing, it was like a survival, I mean, I knew nothing mattered. I knew nothing and no one. It just, I couldn't connect. I couldn't, and I couldn't get it. Nothing made sense to me. This whole humdrum world, like I'm not married. I don't have children. I always thought that I would as younger, but it didn't happen and so on. And anyway, I just thought I couldn't do that. It was like that wouldn't have been satisfying, to me. There was, and nothing has been really, and it's been this journey. So and I feel like your audience, everybody really can feel this. I think a lot, we're kind of like, what are we doing here? And that's what we're waking up to, when you keep going inward. And that was my discovery, which I can say is the biggest, I think, gift in the way that I operate and work and have got to know who I am and how I project out to the world, how I help other people, is through that inward journey, where just start to observe on a deeper level. So you can have an interaction with a person and something that happens, but notice what's happening to you, where are you? And the more that you go in, and it's not like, at first it'll be analytical. We'll be analyzing, we'll be judging, we'll be going, oh my God, what did I do? La, 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 right? But when you go deeper into that and you realize the self-punishment, the judgment, all of those, and you just really get to that place of like surrender. And I always say it's like that. It's my controversial moment. I say it's like suicide, but it's not suicide like a giving up, but it's a surrendering to that moment, that letting go to that degree. That's when you suddenly begin to feel, and you feel all of the things that are you. How are you showing up next to another person, in relationship to another person? And as I began to do that, I started to notice energetics. I started to just, I guess it started with me of just emotions and feelings. But once you tap into that, and particularly with my particular energetics, I could see everything. I started to really feel and be aware of the more subtle things that were happening. And I could look at, the field and so on. And so I began to recognize that I carry the 0 point. I had to know what was that. So the 0 point is the place of no thing and all possibilities. It's literally the present moment without judgment. So it's not zero. It's the place of us being one with everything, right? Because we're multidimensional beings. And as I allowed myself to feel that and realize, what was happening with other people at the deeper level, what I started to notice is that when I would come around a person, their truth of who they are was right to the surface. And, so I had early on things like I was young, so I was probably, I think some of the earlier times were maybe 10, 12, something like that, where people would, I would say hi, and they wouldn't just say hi, they would start telling me their life story and in different things that they would say. At those ages, I didn't reply so much, but when I was a little bit older, about 17, I just noticed that something would come out of my mouth and I would see a profound change in the person. So I started to notice something was happening, and I didn't know what was happening. There was all kinds of things that were occurring. But as I began to, really pay attention to this more, I started to notice, and one of the bigger reasons why I really delved into it wasn't because of those experiences. It was because I was having the opposite reaction, where people would repel and I didn't understand what was happening. And I couldn't figure it out. It was like people either really liked me or really didn't. And I couldn't figure this energy out, And so that's when I dived deeper, and I started to notice that this is what was happening, and that people didn't like it. And sometimes, and people, as we know, people, when they feel energy that feels threatening, they shut down. And so what would happen to me is I would feel their energy, and then I would withdraw, because I had a lot of insecurities, things like that, as we all do, not knowing not understanding. I was just kind of like this innocent being that's just kind of hanging out and didn't know what was taking place. But, when I kept having that and it was so uncomfortable, that's when I realized that I needed to be in the 0 point. I had to be in a place of neutrality all the time, and as I started to ask deeper questions, that's when I started to realize that this is what I came here for. And this is what we all came here for. We came here to show up as source consciousness, basically, to be in that neutrality and support the awakening, of this unity consciousness that we're all stepping into. And for me, there's no choice. And so that's how, I know it's a lot, but this is always wanting to come through, is that this is how it came to what my bio talks about, that. So my particular consciousness that I'm aware of is not from this dimensionality. I'm not from this dimension. I'm aware that it has a much larger energetics. And I want to preface that it's not about a hierarchical. It's about information. We as consciousness are information. And it just means that my particular consciousness has a larger library of information, so to speak, but I realized too that, I'm one of the original seeders of this earth experience, as well as some of the false matrix aspect. And so I've heard it referred to as founders and so on. And the energetics of that is a particular energetic field that doesn't alter. It is prime creator energetics. Doesn't mean that I didn't participate. My energetics didn't participate. And this is the thing, we've all participated. We've all had multidimensional lifetimes, right? So we've all participated in many different lifetimes and experiences. And one thing I will say is that we've all participated on both sides of the fence, or most everyone, both perpetrator and perpetrated. So we've been, and so, this is why this is an interesting dance of what's happening. So anyway, getting down to having an understanding, which I love the word understand and understand, of my own energetics. That's what I came to have an awareness of, is that, that's how I came to the awareness that my energetics didn't shift as well, is that, that's what it means to me of carrying the 0 point, is that it is like it's a particular geometry. And I know sometimes people don't really get the concept of what that means, the geometry. And you can think about it like how things connect together, whether it's a puzzle. And I always say, think of yourself as like a puzzle piece, which we are. We're a puzzle piece in the quantum field, but you're not a flat puzzle piece. You're a spherical, moving puzzle piece. And as you let go and show up as yourself, then you synergistically, beautifully connect to all things. Well, that puzzle piece aspect would be considered geometry. So it's like a calibrator, calculator. And so when we, unbeknownst to us, as we are thinking, as we're speaking, as we're looking at things and showing up, it's all geometry that's doing it. Like you don't, it's like in the movies, you watch, things are calculating and calibrating. And they're connecting to things, which is why all this stuff comes into your reality, into what it is. But it's not necessarily you or what you like or who you are, right? So the key to all of this is that letting go and allowing, you. That's what it means by geometry. So you have a unique geometry that's connected to the whole. And and it's important, you're important. We all are, right? And so when we can let go, when we can allow ourselves, because the holding on, the using the mind basically takes that calibrator and freezes it in certain positions. And if we're a geometry, and think about it like a mathematical sequence, and we're calculated to a particular sequence, well, that sequence is going to continue to play out. You see what I mean? That's what that geometry aspect is meaning, when we're referring to that. But when you can let go and allow for basically the unknown to become known, that's when you learn who you are and why you're here, and the sequencing. And it's not unique to me. I know if you have some of your audience that's coming from basically 0 and I'm at, 5 million or whatever over here, they might be thinking, what? But what I say is, all you have to do is let go and have an authentic experience. Because that's what we're not doing, right? We're not having authentic experiences. We're repeating things, or we have all these characters that, have been in our lives, and they're all inside your head, still looking at you, watching you, and you're adjusting yourself to all these characters every time. And you're doing it in the privacy of your own room, your own head, and you're definitely doing it around other people. It's like, how often do we get around another person and we truly are present? This is the key, right? This is the key. So that felt like all that wanted to come through. I know it's quite a bit, but
No, it was great. It was absolutely perfect. And such a great, I love the visuals that you end up giving too. I can picture all the, especially the geometry part, but
yeah, that just felt important because I know a lot of people
very
struggle
important.
with that.
Well, it's that flow part too. What I was, the word that kept coming to me was flow when you were saying it. We get jammed up. We
Mhm.
trying to keep this flow happening is challenging.
Which is funny because if you think about it, we're life is actually a lot more simplistic than we allow it, and this is what it is we're guided completely away from the simplistic, which is like just be, the idea. I mean, we have a lot of terminology like 0 point and like, and I talk about geometry and I talk because, I have this vast awareness of all these things, but in the human experience, it literally is that we are all just kids on the playground. And if we can just truly be that childlike innocence in the brand new moment and let go. And I know that that's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the easiest and one of the hardest things to do. The easy is because I'm right here. I mean, I got my feet on the floor, I'm looking at my eyes, I'm in my room, but those feelings that we have and we're constantly holding and perpetuating, and I've experienced it. I had a situation not long ago where I had this agreement with this one of my neighbors to help her walk her dogs, and the situation didn't pan out because I couldn't figure out where her apartment was, whatever, and I could feel the self-punishing happening. It's like, oh no, this is terrible, that's not who I am. And I thought, how interesting, that it's here. And of course, I do this, and that's why I say, as I'm as human as anybody else. But I think it was perfect because, I can share it, talk about it, but also it's just showing what the energy that's playing out, it's still here. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've done enough work that I didn't embody it, but I could still see it was there and I could feel it. This is the thing too, you'll feel in the body. I felt it in the solar plexus, which the solar plexus is where we identify ourselves. So you can feel it. I felt that energetics, and I just bring it here. I set it out, and it sits in the emotional field because you have fields. So, I could feel it there. And I just, of course, I can communicate with her telepathically, whatever. I'll send energetics, and I know that I'll run into her. It's interesting that little part of me is still like, because it's a younger age, it's like, okay, I want to be seen, I want to be heard. And so once I could, balance her and bring her into a place of balance, then I'm like, okay, everything happens for a divine reason. It's okay. There's a grander purpose and reason for the way that things occur, because I fully am aware of that. And so I can drop into this energetics and let go. But it like I said, it's an interesting thing because it seems like, being in this present moment and letting go right here should be really easy. And like I said, it is, in the sense that it's me, and I'll bring that, but those energies are really strong. They're still playing out. There's just a lot of dialogues that we have about how we're supposed to show up, and the fear. And I've learned one of my absolute lessons that I have to do is stay in the neutrality no matter what anybody else thinks. And I think that is the key. And it's one of those aha moments when you really get it, because you can say that and go, okay, I know I need to be in neutrality regardless of what anybody else thinks, but we still feel it. But when you really realize what that means, that just means that I am keeping my heart open. I'm staying in compassion, love, and support for all energy, which includes me. That's that place of neutrality. And it's, when you can feel it, it is a practice though. I feel like that it's not something that is automatic right now. It is, in the sense that, I mean, I feel that, but I can feel where, it wants to try to take you out. In my case, I'm very aware, so I don't get taken out of it. I feel it, but I don't get taken out of it. But that's what keeps happening, to to everybody.
Yeah. And speaking of being human,
Yeah.
I'm interested in your thoughts around this dark night of the soul process. Your view on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you saw in a YouTube, I think I'd mentioned that I've had dark night of the soul more than once actually, but well, my experience of that, I guess the most profound level is where there is that recognition that nothing matters and no one and nothing can help that or change that. You have to figure that out. That was really where it was for me. I guess it felt like, you're lost in your head and nothing and no one can help you. And there's it's like this overwhelming energetics of everything. And you just, for me, because I felt I feel everything anyway. But I realized that I had been, keeping things at bay, controlling it, because, we're being guided to play out major frequencies. And the major ones that I'm aware of are enslavement, imprisonment, and sacrifice, right? We enslave ourselves within our minds, within our body. We imprison ourselves within our mind and our body. And we sacrifice health for money. We sacrifice, for whatever, anything, we're constantly doing these energetics. Well, to me, the dark night of the soul is when suddenly all that comes to a head. It's kind of like you're in that 0 point and you realize all these energetics and it's just like, whoa, okay, who am I? What am I doing? And because we're multidimensional, there's layers of participation, and because the false matrix is still playing out, which is still here wanting us to be enslaved and to play these energies. There's a lot going on. So of course, again, the key to this is just let go, let it happen, and what I felt was, I think a biggest key is the fear of losing the mind. And when I realized that, when I let go of that, when I was like, okay, I have no fear of losing the mind, because that's the game. Is the human mind, the brain is just a computer, right? And the computer carries all the information. Well, that's all there. So the idea of like even people that have like Alzheimer's or dementia, things like that, those are occurring because they're not aligned with their 0 point self. They're confused. So the way that I see it is something like Alzheimer's, because they're different. So Alzheimer's is more where you don't have a willingness to own your own participation in whatever you've participated in. And that's because we're playing out this good and bad, right and wrong. And this is, those that will listen to me will hear me talk about a lot about, playing on both sides of the fence. And all that means is, if we have this awareness that whether I, say perpetrator aspect, whatever took place, that you felt they were doing the right thing in that now moment, that's the letting go. And it's about forgiveness and divine forgiveness, because it's just participation, which is forgive me, forgive you, love me, love you, compassion for me, compassion for you, gratitude for me, gratitude for you. And so this is what is kind of trying to come up, I think, when we have what I call the dark night of the soul, is just that sudden awareness that, boom, here I am, and I don't know. And all the little things are playing out. It's like safety is a huge one that plays out. It's not safe. It's not because the original separation, there's this feeling, especially if we had participation in what we feel is the negative agenda. What's being played out is the punishing. That's the sacrificial energy and all of that energetics, right? When we go into that deeper place of safety, we retreat into the physical mind to seek answers. That's why there's that fear of losing the mind. And that's what I was talking about the difference between what I see as Alzheimer's and dementia, which is saying that the Alzheimer's is when the individual is not having that willingness to look at their own participation, because they're just, it's too much in their energetic field. So they lose whatever sequence of events they've had in this particular lifetime. Dementia is also aspects where they're not willing to look at it, but more so that those individuals don't, they're just wanting to participate in all different types of fields. And it's like their energy has always been so lost that they've never truly been grounded, and they've never truly been. So these are also the opportunities, I think, that are available when we go through the dark night of the soul. And I think that is part of why these things occur, at the time. But as we continue to just let go and own, all of your life experiences, how do I really do that? Well, I do that by, recognizing that the emotions and all the things that I'm feeling them. And so the kind of trick to this is not to embody them in the present moment and become them, that it becomes so overwhelming, because that's trying to occur too. That's why it feels like, which we call it dark night of the soul. It's because like these energies of what happened in childhood and the past, all that are all trying to embody here. And it's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with all this? But, if we can become the witnessing observer of this occurring, so I'm over here, and this is with me. I had to come to this, it's like I'm watching this. And, it's both overwhelming at the moment because, wow, it was like so much energy and so many going on. But when I could just observe it, and the observing is being in the present moment, that's how I become in the present moment. So it was a lot of practice of like my feet on the floor, I'm looking out my eyes, I'm in my room, and reminding myself, I'm okay, I'm right here. I'm good. I'm got good health. I'm safe. I'm safe in this room and where I am, whether it's just in my bed, so it was like defining those energetics, to yourself. And as you do that, and you really realize that, then those other aspects will be coming out, because they're showing up regardless, because this is what we're here for. Because what's happening is when we drop in to the present moment, and that's what I feel that dark night of the soul really is. It's kind of a funny thing, because we can call it light really more than anything. But why it occurs is like suddenly I'm awake in this physical body. And who is the I am? Well, I am source consciousness. Well, because everything in this human existence is about matching frequencies. That's all we're doing. And everything is frequency and energy, your clothes, your everything. And we're vibrating at certain rates. And I said before, it's not ascension, it's inscension. So we're embodying who we are. So we are fifth dimensional or higher beings. So we're this energetic beings. And, it's having this awareness suddenly, boom, that's who I am. And what happens is that 0 point, which I said is not zero, it's the nothing and everything, the no thing and all possibilities. So I am suddenly one with everything. So I am suddenly as pure source consciousness within this vehicle. Well, because everything's about matching frequencies. Source consciousness that you are is the highest vibrational frequency. No other frequency can sustain itself in that energy. And let me just say for your audience what matching frequencies really represents. It's like, if you can think about them as just sort of emotions. And by universal law, faster moving frequencies always try to raise slower ones up to match them. And so think about it like, if I'm happy and you're mad, and we come around each other, and happy is vibrating at a much faster rate. So I'm going to irritate you because I'm vibrating at a faster rate. And so as long as I maintain my happy, as long as I stay happy, you only have two choices. You either get happy with me or you go away. How many times you've been around somebody, you're happy, they're mad, they're not happy till you're mad, and then you're mad, you got mad because you lowered your frequency. Well, this is the idea about matching. So, when you have that sudden awakening, boom, I am source consciousness. Now you don't have this on a mental level. You're feeling it. It's like suddenly nothing is connecting. I'm not Well, now I'm suddenly embodied as source consciousness, and everything that is not in alignment with that is going to boom, kind of dissipate, won't leave. But it because you've been matching everything, it doesn't just magically go away. And if you were in a room, a field that matched the high frequency of you, then this would just be gone. It just would dissipate. But in other words, it wouldn't have been there in the first place. But the thing is that we don't realize is that suddenly you have this awareness of source consciousness. Those energies, just imagine them as like, particles like dirt, like, which is what I work with, is like floating outside of you. Suddenly they're in your field, but they're still going to seek a match. And that what you don't realize is that you've been matching that frequency anyway, your clothes, everything. So it's going to want to try to embody again. And this is what's happening. It's like that, okay, part of me feels new and bright and centered, but the other's like, what's going on? And it's like, so if we can just observe this, if we can be just like, okay, let me just realize and remind ourselves, right? I'm right here, everything's good, and we're just observing this. That's when we start to, wow, okay, taking breaths. And I always think about this as what we're doing is we are expanding our light, and I like to describe it as, imagine, that we as source consciousness, like I've said before, we're like this library of information, and source consciousness different from the conscious mind. It's energy and frequency, it's geometry, and this is what God is. Source is like a giant library of information, and you are a smaller library of the giant library. And how we end up in a physical body, of course, we download ourselves in the brain and then we communicate with the body. But let's just say that we need a kind of container for this library of information to be in, and the container's the body. Well, if this were a room, physical room, and imagine we have like a candle lit in the corner of the room. And so that would mean I have like 25% of the room is light. That means 75% of the room is dark. And the difference between light and dark is information. Light is information, dark is the absence of information. Well, if that were your body, it would mean like, 25% of my body is me. That means 75% is something else. What is that? It's the collective belief. It's my parents, it's my partner, it's whatever. Well, in order to shift that light in the room, all I have to do is take that candlelight and expand it across the entire room, and all the darkness goes away. Well, that's exactly the same thing within the body, right? So here we are, and what we're talking about, dark night of the soul, I've expanded. All I have to do is take breaths and expand. But what are we taught? See, we're taught fear. Well, fear is a retraction. So this is why there's nothing to fear but fear itself, because what does fear do? Fear creates more fear. But if I don't acknowledge, if I just go, no, I'm not, there's no fear, then I now am showing up as me. And I'm allowing myself to experience all these emotions and these energies, and as I continue to do that and breathe and allow and expand, then I'm showing up as me, and all that's not me has to go away. Well, the thing is about this is that, and this is again why it becomes challenging, is because very commonly when we have what we call the dark night of the soul, is that major shifts begin to happen in your world. Maybe your relationship, you divorce, maybe your job stops, maybe your whole body changes, or you may suddenly have an awareness of a physical illness that suddenly shows up because you've now moved the energetics to have an awareness to that. And so you want to continue to move those energetics. Or and this is the thing, is that people often think, oh my gosh, this is terrible, but what it is it's just highlighting who we've become. And so again, the more that we can be the witnessing observer of it is how, and what are we doing there? We are remembering that we're source consciousness. And I like to think of it this way: I am the source of my existence. If I am the source of my existence, I wouldn't punish myself. I wouldn't give myself a disease. I wouldn't. So what am I thinking? And that is like, we want to start to have those concepts like, hold on, okay, wait, if I'm the source, what am I doing? What's happening? Is this the experience that I would like to have? And if it's like, no, okay, then like, okay, so what am I doing in relationship to that? And as I go into that neutrality, I start to become aware. And what will happen that people are bypassing is you will have thoughts, you will have flashes of awareness, you will have people. And it's like when you again observe that and you just go through that process of observing that, you'll start to notice how you feel, like, I mean, certain diseases will come in the body because we are in toxic relationships. We're in, different things that are going on. And it's just, I'm giving you a ton. And one thing that I will say that for your audience is that I'm not arbitrarily talking. So because I carry the 0 point, I'm bringing information on multidimensional levels, and that anybody who listens to this at any now moment, it's always in the now moment, because everything that I bring and do is in the 0 point itself, and it's being, and you can feel it. There's a neutrality to what I'm bringing. It's not push and pull. And if people begin to observe and they listen to different speakers and different things, you'll feel where there's attachments. And how I like to describe this is that 99%, if not typically 100% of conversations is manipulation. That is that I'm not just arbitrarily saying something, I'm trying to put something in you or take something from you. If you feel the energetics, I'm doing neither. I'm simply bringing the energetics in the field so that you can feel, because that's what's happening, is it's just showing up as source consciousness to give you the opportunity to expand your own energetics into this field. Okay.
Whew. I could completely feel that even as you were explaining that. There's such a difference to just presenting information. I love it. I have absolutely nothing to add to that, Cathleena. I think that's just perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very conscious of the time, and I know that obviously, we could talk about this for a long time.
Sure.
But I would love for you to give you the opportunity, because I know you have a free gift for everyone as well, which will really kind of be very complimentary to this conversation, and also about your services and how people can connect with you.
Yeah, so it's just going to help you have like an awareness of your connection to physical work. Or so a lot of things that we're talking about here. It's one of the earlier ones that I've done. So we'll say the potency of it is going to be a little bit different in terms of just how, I mean, it's always my energetics, everything's in the 0 point. So there's going to be a lot moving, but I feel like that there'll be a more gentleness to this particular activation, especially for those that are new, and they may have some, cautiousness or whatever in relationship to that. As far as what I do and who I am, everything is in the 0 point. So everything's in the now moment. I do what are referred to as activations, which what that is sort of expanding into the energetics, your geometry of who you are. And I do it through light language, through different movements and actual sequences of energetics. And again, it's hard. It's imagine that I'm like this, tinker of mathematical sequences and able to move those. And I will say, for those that don't know what light language, because it sounds different, light language is actually authentic communication. And I have a lot of different degrees. Sometimes, it's different collectives. And because we are multidimensional, we're made up of like 21 or 23 different collective beings, galactic consciousnesses, and they all have different degrees of information connected to them. So you'll hear in the way that I do things is different toning, different ways, different connectedness, and so on. And what that is, if you think about it, just like on the earth, it's like the sound that the water makes, rushing against something, or the wind, or the birds, or the trees, or those are all what I would call authentic sounds. Human language is not authentic. It's actually designed in the false matrix, enslavement, imprisonment, and sacrifice. I'm speaking everything in the 0 points. Why it's also very important to learn neutrality, so that when we are communicating, we're not playing out those, and we don't realize it. When humans emphasize and do, they don't realize the degrees of the frequencies and energies, and I'm just able to experience all this. So everything that I do is about removing the blocks and so on, to allow for who you really are to show up, and in all kinds of multidimensional levels. So in session, with me, I'm able to look at your whole like hologram. We are vast and multidimensional, and if you think about, I like to describe it like, imagine, the body, of course, is within you, and imagine what it looks like is like in the center, we'll say, it's not exactly, but let's just say that, of this giant maze of, think about it like roads. So if it was like a little spot on a map, of course now we have all of the GPS, but imagine like a road map, a big giant map of just say the world, and you had a little spot in the center, and that would be your body, and then there's just thousands and thousands of roads. Well, they're there, but I might not be able to see them because there is an energetic block, let's just say, in that. And what that is that's when I have fragmented my soul and imprinted something. And what that means is that, as I am, coming into this lifetime and other lifetimes, and I'm told what it means to be a man or a woman or whatever, when I take that on as a belief system, that is when I fragment my soul as that belief system and then imprint that, and I become that, and that's what quantum entanglement is. And this an aspect of it is much more depth, but because that's the idea that I forget that I'm source consciousness having an experience called Cathleena, and I become Cathleena instead. And if I become that, what have I become? So in this idea of your whole hologram as you, it's like I can't see who I really am until I bring back that soul fragment and release that imprint. And how do I do that? Well, that's when I discover, I show up as who I am, and so on and so on. So these are all what I help, and am able to see and look at. And so all of my courses on my website are all there, and they're all in the 0 points. And no matter when you listen, they'll be in the now moment. And each time you listen, they're new. So there's a continuation, with the energetics with this, and everything. So that's kind of
Thank you. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I strongly recommend people to not only access the free gift, but also Cathleena's amazing ability to help with frequencies. I'm smiling because I'm in the middle of doing that. And it's been amazing. Considering that I've had lots of experience with energy myself and with working with different people, I have to say it's been quite powerful. The last month that I've been working with your activation, it's definitely shifting things, that's for sure.
So. I love it. Yeah. And I will say too that those that are feeling drawn, it's because you are connected to the energetics. And we all have lifetimes together. I'm sure that you and I have had lifetimes together. I can feel the energetics, and we're all here for this divine purpose. And it's not one greater or less than. We're all parts of this puzzle piece, and we're all mirrors, and it is that recognition of law of one. I mean, I'm you, you're me, we're one. And this is what I really hope that people feel, and that, yes, if you feel drawn into something, there is an energetic connection, there's a reason, there's a place. And notice, because sometimes what people will have is they'll get like an awareness, like, oh, I need to do this, and then they'll go and they'll either they'll look at timing, or they'll look at money, or they'll look at whatever, and they'll go judge it and whatever. And my encouragement is just go from your heart space, from whatever it is, anything that you do. This is the key to it. It's like really be in that present moment and ask. And this has been my journey, in order for me to be brave enough to show up. When I said earlier that it's both very simple and very challenging to be in the 0 point, and show up as yourself, is because of the stories and the journey, of what you think. And I joke about it. I say the last closet I had to come out of was the galactic closet, and it's like, here I am, and even with light language, I was like, I don't do light language, other people do that, because we have this idea. But when you begin to realize that I am unique, I don't have to find my uniqueness, I am source consciousness, and the game here the true awareness of the game, not the game that's being played, but the reason for being here is to show up as your uniqueness. And that because it has not been the prominent awareness, it's going to be different. But think about that. Of course, it's going to be different because you're different. Of course. But that's a huge piece. But the other piece is it's not going to be part of the norm at the moment, because the norm is the inverted matrix. And so, that had to really be driven home to me. That was that kind of aha moment again, that I was like, oh, wait, so here I was like fearing, coming out into the world of letting people know that I'm multidimensional and all this. But when I really had that driven home, and I was like, wait a minute, but this is divine truth. And I have to say, divine truth is not one thing. Okay, divine truth is the present moment, is the 0 point. That's what divine truth is. So divine truth is that we don't know who we are, and we are way more than we are. So, of course, this narrow view, these limited beliefs that we want to keep aligning to feel inclusive, to make that little bit of money, to do this little stuff. It's like, wow, so when I was able to look at that whole thing and just pull out, and my dialogue to myself is, I'm going to keep my heart open and feel no matter what. And I say, take everything away, let go of everything. And what that means is let go of anything that little me is holding. Because if I'm holding, what am I doing? I'm stopping my geometry. And I remember one of the toughest ones for me was when I was guided to say, take money away. And I was like, what? And I thought, what does that mean? Because of course the brain goes, what are you saying? But what it meant was, take away any part that I am, little me is aligning to. So like when I do my courses, I do everything. Of course, I set it out and I have a fee and I have all that, but I have no attachment. I don't do anything from the business model way, which is the inverted way. No. And I suggest this with anyone, just go in your heart and let your heart be the guidance. The more you do that, life gets amazing, and it really does. And, divine abundance is your birthright. And I will say, before we stop here, that, money is a frequency and an energy, because this is a big thing for most people. And when you realize what frequency and energy you're giving it, and so most people give money safety or freedom, but freedom is freedom, safety, money's money. So, but when we can realize, if you allow yourself to be in, free, to feel safe, and you have money in those categories, then it has to come to you. I have money as divine abundance. And as I feel abundant, money is in that energetic. And so it comes. This is all part of the game that wants to be played out, as though they're these separate things. And that's enslavement, imprisonment, and sacrifice frequencies, right? Where I'm in this miserable job to do this thing, but that's the game. So this is what I will say, is when you can be brave enough to know, yes, you're different, but that's a positive thing, and yes, as we show up different, because remember, when we're showing up in our uniqueness, we're showing up as source consciousness. And if others and other things are not vibrating at that rate, they're gonna feel uncomfortable. And they're going to do what they can to try to bring you down into that. But as long as you stay in that neutrality, they're going to shift or they're going to move away. And this is what we're here for. Okay. So I feel like that's one of the biggest things to want to bring forward.
Yes. I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did. We might have to do more of these.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful that you took the courage to do, to step into that as well, because I can imagine that would have been quite challenging to do that, but I'm so grateful that you did, because here you are with your services to the world.
Yeah, no, well, it is interesting because it does feel like it's challenging, but as you know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, is that it's actually more challenging to not
actually. That's so true.
And that is you, right? Is what you're doing. We all know that.
Yeah you can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it. No. That's why we have the dark night of the soul. It gets that place where it's like, Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated this conversation. It's been so powerful, and I absolutely know already there'll be many people just really resonating with what you've said.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate it,
Thank you.
yeah, we'll connect again soon. Thanks.
Beautiful. And thank you for everything you do.